Hi everyone, welcome to Byte and Beyond with Uday. In this video, we will learn how to handle exceptions in our Spring Boot application. So there are multiple ways to handle exception in Spring Boot application, but one of the best recommended way is the global exception handler. So we will learn how to handle exception in our Spring Boot application using global exception handler. So this is the main agenda for this video. And if you would, if you like to do hands-on with me, then I recommend you to go go to this repository, Spring Boot Practical, and switch to this branch, well validation custom messages, and you are ready to do hands-on with me. And if you are interested directly see the working example, in that case you can switch to 13 global exception handling branch. Over there we already have a source code that you can try and check this out. And for the APIs, I already have a Postman collection. You just have to right click and do the open in new tab, and you will be navigate to the this page. So yes, we are ready to start. So I have created few points. So we will go step by step so you can understand the concept in a proper way. So our first step is solve the problem first. Call the APIs without any custom exception handling and observe the default error response. So as of now, in our Spring Boot application, we haven't implemented the global exception handler, right? At the application level. I mean, we do not have the custom exception. We do not have implemented custom exception yet. So without this custom exception, how the application behaves when there is an error. Okay, so let's see that. So here are the APIs which I'm going to demonstrate one by one. So in post, it is recommended that you should not send the ID, user ID. In our case, it is employees. So you should not send the employee ID. So let's see if we send the employee ID in the request body, then how exactly it behaves. Let's check this out. Employee ID. Okay, this is the correct one. Let me do the one. Let's say employee ID is one. Okay, and let me do one thing. Let me start our Spring Boot application before we try our APIs. So let's first see the difference without our custom exception handling, how the Spring Boot API behaves when there is an error. See, if I am trying to send the employee ID, I am getting 500 error message. This is the generic error message. Whenever you don't have, whenever you are not, handling exception appropriately, you will get the this generic server exception, which is 500 internal server error. So by looking at this exception or this response, we don't understand what exactly is wrong over here, right? Neither user will understand. So it is better to have a proper exception handling for such scenarios that user can easily know that, yeah, For the post, I don't need to pass the employee ID. Okay. So user don't see such generic server error messages. Instead, user will see proper meaningful errors. So user can understand and user can improvise the request. So let me remove this first field employee ID, and now let me try to save this. See, it is getting persisted perfectly fine. Now let's check the same for the put API. Okay, and in the put API as well, I am going to try the previous example. The previous example meaning the user which we have saved. I'm going to use that. Okay, so input we know that we need to send the employee ID. Let's say user forgot to send employee ID over here. Okay, that then what happens? Okay, in that case, let's see. See, still we are getting the 500 internal server error. And if I add that employee ID again, it works perfectly fine. So see, if we do not handle the exception at our application level, user will see the generic error message, and which is not industry standard. Users should see the appropriate error message specific to the issue which user is facing. User should not see the uh, you know unwanted or generic error message. Yeah. For now, yeah. So now the next API is we are going to check is the get. So we know we have the user with the ID 1. Let's say I'm going to try with the user ID 2. What happens? Now this worked absolutely fine. 404 not found. So this is okay. Why? Because if there is the resource is not available in our system, then 404 is acceptable. Yeah, one thing is that the error message is not clear. So this is the one issue in the batch. Get all APIs always, and then the next API is get all APIs, which we are going to check. And if we check that, it always works fine. Even if there is no user, it will still work. Okay. Then let's check the delete API. So if we do the delete by user ID 1, yeah, that we know the user is available with the ID 1. So it is perfectly work fine. 204, no content, meaning the API is able to delete the user from our system. And now if I try to fetch the employees, I'm getting the empty response. Okay. But now let's say user is deleted and still I'm trying to delete that user once again. Let's see what happens. See, this message is misleading. Why? Because even though we don't have any user, I always get okay response, which is not right. Meaning, even if there is no data in our system, user will feels like yes, I have deleted something in my system. Maybe let's say there is no user with the 100 ID, with the employee ID 100. But still, if we hit this API, we are getting okay response. So which is not right. If there is no resource available with that particular ID, we should we should throw appropriate exception from our system so that user can know, hey, so with the employee ID 100, there are no employees. So we don't have anything to delete over there, right? Because if you are getting, okay, 200 response, in our case, 204 response, user will know, yeah, I have deleted something and I'm deleting the same thing once again and again, which is misleading. And that is not correct. Okay. So it's better to have custom exception handling so user will get to know about the specific error or mistakes and then user can improvise the request body accordingly. So now let's jump to the implementation, and let's see how we can add custom exception in our Spring Boot application. So our first step is done. We have demonstrated how the application behaves when there is no custom exception handling. Now let's read the second step. The second step says create custom exceptions and a common error response model. Define your own exception classes and a standard error response structure. So don't worry about this, what exactly this means. So because I'm going to implement everything step by step, so you will know better what exactly step 2 means. So let me go to my IDE, and in the meantime, let me stop my application. Okay, so our second step is create custom exception. Okay, let's focus on this part first. Create custom exceptions. So, okay, we already have exceptions which we have created in our last video, validation, custom validation video. So in this video, we are going to create few custom exceptions, right? So what I am going to do is I'm going to create few exceptions. The first one is the bad request exception. Okay. So whenever, let me first create this exception and then I will explain you what exactly it means. So bad request exception basically extends the runtime exception, because this kind of exceptions we get at the runtime, okay, and not at the compile time. So that is why I'm extending the runtime exception. This is the unchecked, right? Unchecked exception type, which we get during the runtime of application, meaning when our application is running, right? Okay. So let me first explain what bad request exception meaning. So bad request exception meaning when you are, sending inappropriate request. Meaning in our case, in case of post, you are sending the user request with the employee ID. So if you are sending the user request with the employee ID, meaning it is the bad request. And over here, you are sending the request without sorry. In the post, you are sending the request with employee ID, and in the put, you are sending the request without employee ID. Those requests are type of bad request, meaning the request is not correct, and the status code for the bad request is 400. Okay, and over here you just need to give appropriate name, so you can easily identify in your service layer which exception you are exactly using. Okay, so this is meaningful name, and this kind of exception we get at the runtime. So that is why I'm extending the runtime exception. Over here, I'm creating a constructor, and I'm expecting one argument, which is the error message. Okay. Uh, I will explain you how exactly we can use in our service layer. But yeah, this message is basically the error message which we are going to pass from our service layer. And this exception is basically I'm passing to the runtime exception. The superclass is runtime exception. So runtime exception has another constructor which I'm passing over there, and it has its own superclass, okay, which is exception class. So this is the chain of constructor. We are passing the message will the superclass. Okay, so that's how you can create your custom exception. Now create one more custom exception, which is resource not found exception, right? So let me do one thing over here. Let me create one more exception, which is resource. Sorry for the typo. Resource not found exception, right? This is going to be the same. We are going to extend runtime exception over here as well. And over here as well, we are going to accept the error message in the constructor, and we are going to pass that error message in our superclass. Okay, that is it. That's how, and that's easily you can create a custom exceptions. So resource not found meaning whenever you are trying to, fetch the resources. For example, in our get request, you are trying to, let me start my application once again, huh? So I can, explain you along with our implementation. Okay. So we know that we don't have user with the uh, employee ID too, right? So in this case, we are getting resource not found exception. So for that purpose, we are using resource not found exception. Okay. Okay. Perfect. Now we are going to create one more exception, which is resource conflict exception, right? So let me stop application uh, in the meantime and create one more exception. Similar way, just the name will be different. That's it. Resource, okay, conflict exception. Resource conflict exception, right? Okay, this is class, and yes, you guess it right. Over here as well, we are going to implement, this runtime exception. I mean, extend the runtime exception. Let me remove this unnecessary things. Okay, perfect. Okay. So, yeah. So this is the constructor. And similarly, we will pass the error message, and the error message will be transferred to the superclass. Resource conflict exception basically we use when we have the resources already available in our system. Let me explain this as well. Okay. So you will get to know that we are why and what is the reason behind of each and every exception which we are creating or which we are going to use. So resource conflict meaning, let's say I have one user, okay, user with the um, let me fetch the all the employees. Let me check how many resources we have. We have zero resources. Okay. Okay. Now, okay, this is, let me remove this employee ID from here. Okay, now we have one user. Okay, if we see our system, if we see the get APIs, we have one user with Uday Patel, and the email address is uday@gmail.com. So that one thing we know that the email address must be unique, right? For each and every employee, the email address must be unique. But let's say Harry Potter is trying to use the same email address. So in that case, we should throw the resource conflict exception, right? Why? Because one email address is already persisted in our system with the uday@gmail.com, and another user is trying to use the same email address, right? So which is not correct in our case. So in that case, we should throw the resource conflict exception. So let me try to persist this data. See, you are getting 500 error because system is not allowing to have a duplicate email address for multiple employees, right? The email address must be unique, one email address per employee. So if I update the email field instead of Uday, now it is Harry. Now the user will be persisted perfectly fine. So in this case, we can use the resource conflict exception. Now you can see we have two users. Okay. So this is the purpose of resource conflict exception. Now mm, we have created three custom exceptions so far. Perfect. So that is it for this video. In the next video, we will design the common error response and configure risk controller advice. So stay tuned. See you in the next video. Bye.